Imagine living in a normal, quiet house, and one night, you hear a strange knock on the wall. You ignore it, thinking it's nothing. But then, it happens again, and again. Soon, the knocking turns into something far more terrifying. This isn't the start of a horror movie. This was the reality for the Hodgson family in Enfield, London, back in 1977. What started as simple noises in their council house on Green Street would soon become one of the most famous and chilling paranormal cases in history, captivating a nation and drawing in investigators from all over the world. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying back to the late 1970s to uncover the story of the Enfield Poltergeist, a case so intense that it was documented live by major newspapers and left even hardened police officers questioning what they saw. We'll explore the terrifying events, the shocking evidence, and the endless debate that still surrounds this case. Was it a genuine haunting, or one of the most elaborate hoaxes ever staged? Let's find out. It all began in August 1977. Peggy Hodgson, a single mother, was living with her 4 children: Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. One evening, her 2 daughters, Janet, aged 11, and Margaret, aged 13, complained that their beds were shaking. Peggy initially dismissed it as kids playing around. But the disturbances didn't stop. Soon, the family heard shuffling sounds, and then a series of loud, rhythmic knocks coming from inside the walls. These weren't just random sounds. They seemed to follow them from room to room, growing more insistent each night. Frightened, Peggy called her neighbors, Vic and Peggy Nottingham. When they came over, they too heard the knocking. Vic later told reporters that the sound was so distinct, it was as if someone was hammering on the other side of the wall. Feeling completely unnerved, they decided to call the police. This is where the story takes a turn from a simple family disturbance into a nationally recognized paranormal event. When a police constable arrived at the home, she was initially skeptical, as you would expect. But as she was taking Peggy Hodgson's statement in the living room, something happened that she couldn't explain. A heavy armchair, sitting several feet away from anyone, suddenly slid about 4 feet across the floor. The officer was so stunned that she later signed an official witness statement confirming what she had seen. This single event, a police officer witnessing inexplicable activity, gave the case a level of credibility that most paranormal claims never achieve. With the police report making waves, the British media descended on 284 Green Street. Reporters from major newspapers like the Daily Mirror and the Daily Express set up camp inside the Hodgson home, hoping to witness the strange phenomena for themselves. They didn't have to wait long. In their presence, drawers were wrenched from chests, toys and other objects flew across rooms as if thrown by an invisible hand, and loud, unexplained bangs echoed through the house. The reporters weren't just hearing stories. They were seeing it happen right in front of them. The Enfield Poltergeist was no longer a private family matter. It was front-page news. The activity seemed to center around 11-year-old Janet. She was often the target of the poltergeist's actions and the main witness to many of its most dramatic events. Things took an even darker turn when Janet herself began to change. She would fall into trance-like states, and a deep, gravelly, and undeniably male voice, would speak from her. This voice claimed to be Bill, a man who said he had died in the house years earlier. Morris Grass, an investigator from the Society for Psychical Research, arrived to study the case. He, along with his colleague Guy Lyon Playfair, spent months in the Hodgson home, meticulously documenting everything. They brought in recording equipment and captured hours of audio, including the now infamous Bill voice. On one of these recordings, the voice, speaking through Janet, declared, "Just before I died, I went blind, and then I had a hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in the chair in the corner downstairs." This was a chillingly specific claim. Grass and Playfair were initially skeptical, but they decided to investigate. They managed to track down the son of a man named Bill Wilkins, who had lived in the house before the Hodgsons. Bill's son confirmed the story. His father had indeed passed away in the house, sitting in a chair downstairs, after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage. The investigators were stunned. How could an 11-year-old girl know these details? This piece of evidence became a cornerstone for those who believed the Enfield haunting was real. The photographic evidence from Enfield is just as compelling and controversial. A series of famous pictures, taken by a press photographer, appear to show Janet levitating in midair, her body contorted in an unnatural position above her bed. These images were splashed across newspapers and became iconic symbols of the case. Skeptics immediately cried foul. They argued that Janet was simply jumping off her bed and the photographer had caught her in midair. They pointed out that her posture looked more like someone jumping than someone being lifted by an unseen force. And indeed, there were reasons to be skeptical. At one point, Janet and her sister Margaret were caught on camera bending spoons and hiding a tape recorder. When confronted, they admitted to faking some of the events. Janet later said they did it once or twice to see if the investigators would notice, especially during times when nothing was happening. She explained that they felt pressured to perform, with so many people in their home expecting something supernatural to occur. This admission gave skeptics all the ammunition they needed. To them, it proved the entire case was an elaborate prank concocted by two bored and imaginative children. However, the investigators, Morris Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair, stood firm. They argued that, while the children may have faked some minor events, it was impossible for them to have faked everything. They had documented over 1,500 separate incidents, many of which occurred when the children were being closely observed or were even asleep. How could two young girls make a heavy armchair slide across the floor on its own? How could they produce a deep, masculine voice for hours on end without damaging their vocal cords? And how could they have known the specific details of Bill Wilkins's death? The investigators also noted that the poltergeist activity was often violent and directed at Janet. She was slapped, pushed, and even allegedly thrown out of her bed. They felt it was highly unlikely that a child would subject herself to such physical abuse for the sake of a prank. Playfair later wrote in his book, "This House is Haunted," that while he believed the girls did play tricks, the vast majority of the phenomena were genuine. He concluded that they were dealing with a real poltergeist, one that was mischievous, intelligent, and at times, malevolent. For nearly 2 years, the chaos continued. Priests were brought in to perform exorcisms, but the disturbances only seemed to grow stronger in response. Scientists and paranormal experts debated the evidence, with some proposing logical explanations like seismic activity or unusual acoustics in the house, while others remained convinced that something supernatural was at play. The constant presence of reporters and investigators turned the Hodgson family's life into a circus. They had no privacy, and the children were subjected to intense scrutiny and psychological testing. Then, as suddenly as it began, the activity started to fade in 1979. The knocks became less frequent, the flying objects settled, and the voice of Bill Wilkins fell silent. The family was finally able to find some peace, but the story of the Enfield poltergeist was far from over. It had left an indelible mark on paranormal research and popular culture. The case has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and even major motion pictures like The Conjuring 2. So, what really happened at 284 Green Street? To this day, there is no definitive answer. Skeptics maintain that it was a case of mass hysteria fueled by two clever children who got caught up in a lie that spiraled out of control. They point to the girls' confessions and the questionable nature of the photographic evidence as proof of a hoax. On the other hand, believers argue that the sheer volume of evidence, including the testimony of multiple independent witnesses like police officers and journalists, cannot be easily dismissed. The verified details about Bill Wilkins's death and the physical phenomena that occurred under controlled conditions suggest that something truly unexplainable took place in that house. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It's possible that a genuine paranormal event was happening, and the children, feeling the pressure of the media spotlight, occasionally faked things to keep the attention on them. This would explain both the undeniable evidence and the moments of deception. The Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most compelling and divisive cases in the annals of the paranormal. It forces us to question the boundaries of our reality and consider the possibility that there are forces at work that we do not yet understand. Whether you believe it was a ghost, a poltergeist, or a prank, The story of the Hodgson family is a powerful reminder of how quickly the ordinary can become extraordinary. What do you think? Was the Enfield haunting real, or was it the work of two imaginative children? Let me know your theories in the comments below. We love reading your perspectives on these mysterious cases. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Enfield poltergeist. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the unknown. We'll see you in the next video. Stay curious.